You're listening to the Telltale Channel. Don't forget to check me out on all social media: Patreon, Twitter, Teespring, and Etsy. All links can be found in the description or on my website, telltaleatheist.com. So the next article I wanted to take a look at is entitled, "This Survey Says Most Americans Oppose Religious Exemptions to COVID Rules." This is by Hemant Mehta on the Friendly Atheist website. So let's give it a read and see what it says. "There are a number of pastors, some running large churches, who believe they should be allowed to meet in person regardless of the restrictions in place for other indoor venues. They don't want to mandate masks. They don't really stop people from interacting with each other. We know this because we've seen videos of their services. Those pastors generate a disproportionate number of headlines because, well, they're insane. They're putting people in danger, and they don't give a damn. You might get the impression that they represent a large segment of the Christian world. But here's some sobering news. According to a new survey from the Pew Research Center, the vast majority of Americans, 79%, believe houses of worship should be subject to the same rules as everywhere else. More importantly, 74% of Christians agree with that sentiment. Among evangelicals who are less prone to taking this virus seriously, it's 62%. 8 in 10 Americans, including 3/4 of Christians, say houses of worship should be subject to the same social distance rules as other organizations." And this is a chart from Pew Research. They surveyed all U.S. adults. Well, they surveyed people, and of the U.S. adults they surveyed, 79% said they should follow the same rules. 19% said they should be allowed more flexibility with the rules. 74% of Christians said they should be required to follow the same rules. 25% said they should be allowed more flexibility with the rules. Why would anybody say they should be allowed more flexibility with the rules? You know what else I find interesting about this survey? The fact that these numbers, roughly, give or take, mirror the percentages of people who believe that Noah's Ark is a real, literal story versus just a tale, an allegory, or whatever. That is really interesting. It used to be 42 to 43% of the country believed that Noah's Ark was a real, literal story. Now we're down to about 25%, give or take. That's an interesting sign. That means that science is roughly winning out. But as we'll talk about in a little while, it's kind of effectively boiling down to the most extreme people. It's becoming more and more polarized. The people who still refuse to accept evolution as a fact are getting more and more radicalized. They're going to get more and more extreme, and they're going to refuse to change their position no matter what. So that number is probably going to keep ticking down a little bit, but there's going to be a point at which that number is not going down any further. It's like Donald Trump's support base, basically. It's like he can fuck up and fuck up and fuck up over and over again, and you'll pick off a few percentage points here or there, but at a certain point, there will come a time where nobody else is leaving his support base. Everybody who supports him at some point in time is going to be there to stay. He could literally shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and not lose any more of those voters. Where is that number? I mean, Trump literally sent the military into U.S. cities to quell protests. That is the definition of fascism and the extermination of freedom of speech. And some small percentage of the country supported him in that decision. That is insane. Those people never change their minds on Trump, ever. It's like my mom. She will never change her mind on Jehovah's Witnesses, no matter what. She could be subjected to Chinese water torture, and she would come out the other side a Jehovah's Witness, bottom line. When you're walking into these types of conversations with people, you have to assume that their minds can be changed. You have to assume that every criminal in prison can be rehabilitated. Even though that's unrealistic, even though we know that's not the case, even though there are some percentage of criminals who will never be rehabilitated, some percentage of Jehovah's Witnesses who will never be deprogrammed, some percentage of Trump supporters who will never be deprogrammed. We have to walk into every conversation expecting or assuming that there's a possibility that this one could. So on an individual basis, you have to assume the best case scenario for these people, generally speaking. That's my opinion on it. But on a statistical level, Jehovah's Witnesses as a religion will never go away. Trump supporters will always, some percentage will always support him. We will always have the anti-evolution monkey on our back as a country, unfortunately. But this survey is an interesting indication of the culture war and where people fit within it and how many people are a part of it. Roughly, give or take, the same number of people who don't accept evolution as the fact that it is. Let's continue reading. It's somewhat refreshing to realize most people are sensible, but it's truly troubling that anyone would think a church should face fewer restrictions when it comes to a virus that doesn't care what religion you are. The same survey found that only 18% of evangelicals say their churches are closed. Most of them, 64%, said their churches are open with modifications. A shocking 18% said that things are already back to normal. Compare those numbers to those of historically black Protestants. 41% say their churches are closed, 46% say their churches are open with modifications, and only 10% say their churches are operating the same as always, versus the 18% of evangelicals that said things are already back to normal. And yet, while most public schools have switched to online learning, and the ones that haven't are learning the hard way, that they should have done just that, many churches still believe they don't need to take a whole host of precautions. The pandemic will be prolonged because too many people in positions of power insist there's nothing to worry about. They're wrong. Unfortunately, we all have to suffer because of their irresponsible actions. Just fucking wear a mask. Masks hamper the spread of the virus so effectively. And we've got this stupid culture war where people are obsessed with not wearing masks. What is the harm? There's minimal effort that goes into wearing a mask. Seriously, just wear one. What's the big deal? I don't get it. I have a mask that has vents on it. I found out recently that those are less preferred than just plain full face masks without vents. So I went and bought one. Just a plain black face mask. I feel pretty dope. I feel like a hard ass in this mask, honestly.